There is a rule so simple that it feels almost childish. You learn it before you ever hear the word science. You don't need equations, experiments, or theories to believe it. You just need experience. The rule is this: if nothing interferes, things keep doing what they're already doing. A rolling ball keeps rolling. A swinging pendulum keeps swinging. A habit repeats itself. A trend continues. This idea is so obvious that we rarely question it. It's the reason we expect bridges to stay standing, climates to remain stable, and routines to persist. It's why we're shocked when something suddenly stops, collapses, or reverses direction. We assume continuity is the default state of reality, and for the most part, we're right. But every so often, nature does something deeply unsettling. It violates this expectation in a way that feels abrupt, unfair, and sometimes catastrophic. A material under constant stress snaps. Without warning, a stable ecosystem collapses. A calm system suddenly explodes into chaos, and when it happens, our instinct is always the same. Something must have gone wrong. But what if nothing went wrong? What if the system followed the rule perfectly, right up until the moment it broke? Imagine pushing a heavy box across the floor. At first, it doesn't move. You push harder. Still nothing. You push a little more, and suddenly it slides forward. Not gradually, not politely, instantly. The box didn't slowly transition from rest to motion. It resisted, and then it yielded. That moment, the sudden change, is where our intuition fails. Because according to the rule, if the box wasn't moving a moment ago, it shouldn't be moving now. And yet, here it is, sliding effortlessly. The rule didn't just bend, it snapped. Now imagine the same behavior playing out in systems far more complex than a box on a floor. Imagine stress building invisibly in the Earth's crust for centuries, then releasing itself in seconds. Imagine pressure accumulating inside a star, a market, a population, or a political system, then collapsing into a new state almost instantly. In each case, the system obeyed nature's simplest law, until it didn't. The unsettling truth is that many of the most dramatic events in the universe aren't caused by external shocks. They're caused by systems reaching internal limits. Limits we didn't see, limits we didn't measure, limits we assumed didn't exist. Today, we're going to explore what happens when nature's simplest law breaks. Not because of randomness or chaos, but because of something far more interesting. Hidden thresholds, points where smooth, predictable behavior gives way to sudden transformation. And once you learn how these thresholds work, once you see how easily stable systems can betray our expectations, you'll start noticing them everywhere. In physics, in biology, in engineering, in human behavior, even in your own life. Because the scariest part isn't that nature breaks its rules, it's that it follows them perfectly, all the way to the edge. To understand why these sudden breaks feel so disturbing, we need to examine the quiet assumption hiding underneath them. When we say, things keep doing what they're doing, we're really assuming something stronger, that change is smooth, that effects scale gradually with causes, that pushing a little harder produces a little more. Movement, not a completely different outcome. This assumption is so deeply ingrained that we build entire systems around it. Engineers calculate safety margins, economists extrapolate trends, doctors monitor slow changes in vital signs, governments plan based on steady growth. Even our personal decisions rely on the idea that tomorrow will look mostly like today. And most of the time, this assumption works remarkably well. If you slowly stretch a rubber band, it stretches a little more each time. If you heat water gradually, its temperature rises predictably. If a population grows steadily, you expect next year to look like this year, just slightly larger. The world appears linear, continuous, well-behaved. But this is where the trap lies. Many systems only appear smooth because we're measuring the wrong thing. Underneath the visible behavior, forces are accumulating. Energy, stress, pressure, information, and balance. The system isn't changing in the way we can see. It is changing in the way it can afford not to. Think about bending a paperclip back and forth. For a while, nothing seems wrong. It bends. It straightens. It bends again. According to our rule, the next bend should behave like the last. But inside the metal, microscopic fractures are spreading. You don't see them. You don't feel them. And then, suddenly, the clip snaps. The behavior changes not gradually, but catastrophically. This is why failures feel like surprises even when they aren't. The system was evolving, just not in the dimension we were watching. Modern life is filled with these invisible dimensions. Financial systems carry hidden leverage. Software systems carry hidden dependencies. Ecological systems carry hidden feedback loops. Social systems carry hidden tensions. The surface remains calm while the underlying structure approaches a breaking point. And because our brains evolved to track visible change, not invisible accumulation, we trust what we can observe. We trust continuity. We trust trends. We trust stability. Until one day, continuity collapses. What makes this particularly dangerous is that these systems often give us false confidence. The longer something remains stable, the more certain we become that it will stay that way. The more data we gather showing nothing has changed, the more convinced we are that nothing will change. This is exactly backwards. In many systems, stability is not a sign of safety. It's a sign of tension being stored. The longer the calm persists, the more violent the eventual release can be. So when we say a rule has been broken, that's not really true. The system didn't disobey nature. It followed a deeper rule we didn't know how to see. To understand the deeper rule and why it governs everything from earthquakes to ideas, we need to strip the world down again. We need to build a system simple enough that we can see every force at work, including the ones that usually stay hidden. So once again, we're going to leave the real world behind. We're going to construct a minimal universe, one with almost nothing in it. And then we're going to watch how something that looks perfectly stable suddenly isn't. Let's build the smallest possible world where nature's simplest law seems unbreakable. In this world, there is only a single object, a block resting on a flat surface. No air resistance, no friction, no randomness, just a perfectly idealized system. If the block is still, it stays still. If it moves, it keeps moving. Nothing mysterious, nothing dramatic. Now we introduce Tom. Tick by tick, we apply a force to the block, a gentle, constant push. On each tick, the push increases by exactly the same amount. If reality were as simple as this model, prediction would be effortless. Twice the force, twice the motion. Everything would scale smoothly. At first, that's exactly what happens. The block doesn't move. Tick after tick, the force increases. Still nothing. According to the rule, nothing should change, and it doesn't. Stability appears absolute. But what's really happening is that the system is storing something. The surface beneath the block isn't perfectly rigid. On a microscopic level, it's made of countless tiny contact points. Each one resists motion slightly differently. As the force increases, these contact points begin to deform. They bend, stretch, compress. None of this is visible. None of it shows up in the block's position. But energy is being stored in the system. And then, suddenly, one contact point fails. That shifts extra stress onto the others. They fail too in a fraction of a second. The block transitions from complete stillness to motion. Not gradually, not predictably. Abruptly, the rule didn't fail. It revealed its limit. Now let's simplify even further. Strip away the block and the surface. Replace them with a single number that represents resistance. Each tick, resistance increases. Nothing changes until resistance crosses a critical threshold. When it does, the system flips states. This is the core pattern hiding beneath countless phenomena. A system evolves quietly, storing stress until it reaches a boundary where the same rules produce a different outcome. To make this clearer, imagine a digital counter that increments by 1 each second. For the first 99 seconds, it behaves exactly as expected. At 100, it resets to 0. If you tried to predict the future based only on the last few seconds, you get it completely wrong at the moment that matters most. This is why prediction fails precisely when we need it most. Our models extrapolate from recent behavior, but thresholds don't announce themselves. They're invisible until they're crossed. And here's the most unsettling part. These thresholds aren't rare. They're not anomalies. They're a fundamental feature of systems governed by simple rules interacting with constraints. We tend to think of dramatic change as something external, a shock, a disruption, an unexpected force. But in many cases, the cause is internal. The system carries its own failure point inside it from the beginning. To see just how universal this pattern is, we need to add one more ingredient to our minimal world. Something that turns thresholds from isolated events into unavoidable outcomes. Something that ensures that breaking points don't just exist, they're eventually reached. So far, our minimal world has shown us something important. Stability can hide accumulating stress, and thresholds can turn smooth change into sudden transformation. But on their own, thresholds are rare events. A system might never reach them. To understand why sudden breaks are not just possible, but common, we need to introduce feedback. Feedback is what happens when the output of a system loops back in and influences the system itself. And once feedback enters the picture, nature's simplest law becomes fragile. Let's return to our abstract model. We'll replace the block with a population of identical units, call them nodes. Each node has a single state, calm or strained. Most of the time, nodes remain calm. But when strain builds up beyond a certain point, a node flips state and releases its strain into neighboring nodes. At first, this system looks incredibly boring. One node becomes strained, then relaxes. Nothing spreads. Nothing escalates. The system absorbs small disturbances and returns to equilibrium based on recent behavior. You'd confidently predict that the future will look exactly the same. But now we add one simple rule. When a node releases strain, it increases the strain of its neighbors. That's it. No intelligence, no planning, just local interaction. For a long time, nothing dramatic happens. Small releases occur and die out. The system appears robust, stable, predictable. The rule holds. Then, one day, a release doesn't stop. A strained node flips, pushing its neighbors closer to their own thresholds. One of them flips too, then another. A cascade forms. In seconds, a disturbance that would normally vanish spreads across the entire network. What changed? Nothing external, the same rules applied, the same slow accumulation. The only difference was timing. The system happened to be closer to its critical point. This is why feedback is so dangerous for prediction. It transforms local events into global ones. It creates amplification. And amplification means that small causes can have disproportionately large effects. We see this everywhere. In power grids, where a single failure can trigger widespread blackouts. In ecosystems, where the loss of one species destabilizes many others. In social networks, where a minor post suddenly goes viral. In markets, where a small panic snowballs into a crash. And yet, before these events occur, everything looks fine. The system absorbs stress repeatedly without consequence. Each successful recovery reinforces our confidence. Each false alarm convinces us the system is safe. But this reasoning is flawed. The absence of failure doesn't mean the absence of danger. It often means the system is loading energy once feedback loops dominate. The system's behavior shifts from linear to non-linear. Changes no longer scale proportionally. Prediction based on recent history becomes unreliable precisely because the system's future depends on how close it is to a hidden boundary. And here's the key insight. Systems with feedback don't fail gradually. They fail all at once. This doesn't mean the system is chaotic or random. It means it follows a deeper rule, one that governs how stability, accumulation, and amplification interact. Now that we've seen how feedback creates instability, we're ready to answer the central question. If nature as simplest law breaks so often, why do we trust it so much? And more importantly, how can we tell when it's about to fail? To answer that, we need to examine what happens right before a system crosses its breaking point. When systems approach their breaking point, something strange happens. They often become more predictable, not less. This seems backwards. We expect instability to announce itself with chaos, noise, or erratic behavior. But in many systems governed by thresholds and feedback, the warning signs are subtle, even deceptive. Let's go back to our network of nodes. As strain accumulates, each node spends more time near its threshold. Small disturbances that once disappeared now linger a bit longer. The system takes more time to recover from tiny shocks. Nothing dramatic happens, but everything slows down. This phenomenon has a name: critical slowing down. Imagine pushing a pendulum. When it's far from a tipping point, it snaps back quickly. But as the system approaches instability, recovery becomes sluggish. It looks calm, stable, almost frozen. But that slowness is a warning sign. In our model, you'd observe fewer visible changes, fewer fluctuations, long stretches of apparent calm. And if you relied on the rule, if you assumed that because nothing dramatic has happened recently, nothing will happen soon, you'd be dangerously wrong. The system isn't quiet because it's safe. It's quiet because it's tense. This is why many catastrophic events are preceded by eerie stillness, the air before a storm, the silence before a market crash, the calm phase before a seizure, the deceptive stability of a failing structure, the period when everything seems normal right before it isn't. As systems accumulate complexity, these effects become stronger. Feedback loops reinforce themselves. Dependencies multiply. Recovery pathways narrow. The system becomes efficient, and efficiency removes redundancy. Redundancy is what absorbs shocks. Without it, failure becomes inevitable. This is a paradox of optimization. Systems designed to be maximally efficient often become maximally fragile. They operate beautifully under normal conditions, but they leave no room for error. When stress builds, there's nowhere for it to go. In our network, this looks like tightly connected nodes that share strain rapidly. The same connections that allow smooth coordination also enable rapid cascades. What once helped the system function now helps it fail. And here's where the rule truly misleads us. The more stable and efficient a system appears, the more we trust it. The longer it works, the more confident we become. We confuse consistency with safety, but consistency can be the symptom of a system marching steadily toward a cliff. This doesn't mean prediction is useless. It means we've been predicting the wrong thing. Instead of asking what will the system do next, we should ask how close is the system to its limits. Unfortunately, limits are often invisible. They don't show up in trends. They don't announce themselves in averages. They live in structure, connectivity, and feedback, properties we rarely measure. To understand how some systems survive these tipping points while others collapse, we need to look at what happens after the break. Because not all failures are equal. Some destroy systems completely. Others allow them to transform, adapt, and continue. That difference turns out to depend on one final factor: how systems respond once the rule is broken. Up to this point, breaking nature's simplest law has sounded like something to fear: collapse, cascades, sudden loss of control. But here's the twist. In many systems, breaking isn't a malfunction, it's a feature. To see why, let's return one last time to our network of nodes. Suppose we redesign it so that when a cascade happens, the system doesn't reset to zero. Instead, it changes its structure. Links rearrange, strain thresholds adjust, weak connections disappear, strong ones remain. Now watch what happens. The first few cascades are violent. Large portions of the network fail simultaneously. But after each event, the system becomes better adapted to handle the stress that caused the failure. Over time, the cascades become smaller, more frequent, and less destructive. The system has learned. Of course, nothing in the system is conscious. There's no memory, no intent. The learning happens automatically through structural change. Failure removes configurations that couldn't survive. What remains is more resilient. This is how forests work. Small fires clear dead material and prevent larger, catastrophic fires. This is how immune systems work. Exposure strengthens future response. This is how evolution works. Extinction and mutation shape populations over time. Even the Earth's crust behaves this way. Tiny earthquakes release stress constantly. Regions without them are often the ones storing energy for a massive rupture. The problem isn't breaking the rule. The problem is suppressing breakage for too long. When systems are prevented from failing in small ways, stress accumulates, pressure builds, feedback tightens, and eventually, the failure becomes unavoidable and devastating. This creates a deeply uncomfortable conclusion. Absolute stability is not only impossible, it's dangerous. Yet humans are obsessed with control. We smooth volatility. We eliminate small disruptions. We optimize systems for maximum efficiency and minimum variation. In doing so, we unknowingly set the stage for massive breakdowns. Nature doesn't do this. Natural systems tolerate noise. They allow fluctuation. They accept small failures as the cost of survival. That's why they endure. So when nature's simplest law breaks, it's not always signaling the end of a system. Often, it's signaling a transition, a reset, a chance to reorganize. This reframes how we should think about instability. Instead of asking how to prevent all failure, we should ask how to make failure survivable. How to design systems that bend, not shatter. That adapt, not collapse. The rule isn't wrong. It's incomplete. Smooth continuation describes how systems behave far from their limits. But near the edge, a different rule takes over, one that governs transformation instead of persistence. And once you see that, you start to realize something unsettling. The moments when everything seems to fall apart, maybe. The moments when systems are doing exactly what they were supposed to do. To bring this idea back to the real world and to ourselves, we need to zoom out one final time. Because this isn't just about physics or networks. It's about how we interpret change, uncertainty, and disruption in our own lives. By now, the pattern should feel familiar. Systems accumulate stress invisibly. Feedback amplifies small changes. Thresholds trigger sudden transformation. Breaking isn't failure. It's often adaptation. And yet, despite understanding this intellectually, we are constantly surprised when it happens in the real world. Why? Because humans don't experience systems as systems. We experience them as stories. We notice trends, not structures. We remember recent events more vividly than distant ones. We assume continuity because it feels safe, and when nothing dramatic happens for a long time, we quietly downgrade the possibility that it ever will. This is why market crashes are called shocks, even when warning signs were present. Why infrastructure failures are labeled unexpected, even when stress had been building for decades. Why social movements appear to erupt out of nowhere, despite years of accumulated pressure. Our intuition is calibrated for smooth worlds, but the real world isn't smooth, it's lumpy. Consider how we talk about risk. We say things like the odds are low or it hasn't happened before. But in threshold-based systems, PsycheLen tells you almost nothing about future behavior. A system can absorb stress flawlessly until it can't, and the moment it can't, history stops being a guide. Even worse, many of the tools we use to manage complexity actively hide danger. Averages smooth out extremes. Metrics collapse structure into single numbers. Optimization removes slack. We reward efficiency and punish redundancy, even though redundancy is what prevents cascades. This creates a dangerous illusion of control. The more complex our systems become, the more we rely on abstractions to understand them. But abstractions strip away the very details that determine when thresholds will be crossed. We end up flying blind, confident in our instruments, unaware that the most important variables aren't being measured at all. And this doesn't just apply to global systems, it applies to personal ones too. Burnout rarely announces itself with chaos. It arrives after long periods of apparent stability. Relationships don't collapse because of one argument. They collapse after years of unexpressed strain. Skills don't disappear suddenly. They erode quietly, then fail when needed most. In each case, the rule feels broken. I was fine yesterday. Everything was working. Nothing changed. But something was changing just beneath the surface. Once you see the pattern, it becomes hard to unsee. You start noticing how often we mistake calm for safety, efficiency for robustness, and control for understanding. And that leads to the most important question of all. If these systems are inevitable, if thresholds and breaks are unavoidable, what can we actually do? The answer isn't prediction, it's preparation. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Nature's simplest law was never wrong. It was just incomplete. Things do keep doing what they were doing until the structure they depend on can no longer support the behavior. Stability isn't a promise, it's a temporary condition. And the deeper rule governing the universe isn't continuity, but transformation under constraint. Once you understand this, your relationship with uncertainty changes. You stop asking when disruption will happen, because in complex systems, it always will. Instead, you ask how stress accumulates, where feedback loops exist, and what happens when limits are reached. You stop trusting smooth trends and start paying attention to structure. This doesn't make the world predictable, but it makes it legible. Legibility is different from certainty. It's the ability to recognize danger without needing exact timelines. It's knowing which systems are brittle and which are resilient. It's understanding that small failures are often protective, while perfect stability is often a warning sign. The most resilient systems, natural or human-made, share a few key traits. They allow variation. They tolerate noise. They fail in small, recoverable ways. They preserve slack instead of eliminating it. They don't rely on a single path, metric, or solution. They don't try to prevent breaking. They try to survive it. And this applies at every scale. In engineering, in ecosystems, in economies, in organizations, in personal lives. If you design your life around never failing, you become fragile. If you allow small resets, rest, reflection, change, you adapt. If you listen only to what's visible, you miss what's accumulating. If you respect limits instead of denying them, you gain flexibility. The universe doesn't punish systems for breaking its simplest law. It rewards systems that know how to cross thresholds without destroying themselves. So the next time something sudden happens, a collapse, a shift, a transformation, resist the urge to ask, how did this come out of nowhere? Instead, ask the better question, what was quietly building that I wasn't watching? Because in the end, nature's simplest law doesn't explain why things fall apart. It explains why they hold together for as long as they do.